This week, a quick rundown of the Midwest Conference of Masonic Education. What did you miss? A lot. And then we'll read a great piece about music in Freemasonry. And from this unique point of view, we deconstruct reality by looking at music, dance, and when it all comes together, something special happens. All this and more. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Whence Came You, a Masonic podcast featuring research papers and discussions related to Freemasonry. Here's your host, Brother Robert Johnson.
Welcome back to the show. This is episode number 676. I want to thank our contributors, fellows, producers, and legacy partners of the WCY podcast. It's because of you we can even make this show and continue bringing quality Masonic education to all those interested in Freemasonry and, of course, its kindred sciences. If you're out there and you're thinking, hey, I'd love to help this Masonic education initiative, head on over to our website, wcypodcast.com. Click on Support the Show and check out the various options. As I mentioned, all monies that we bring in come right back into this program. We also have a shop and many other ways to help support the show. Thanks once again. In the news, I alluded to the show being a little bit late because we went to the Midwest Conference of Masonic Education. It was an epic event. You can read all about my general thoughts and exploits probably in the next Lyceum, which will come out at the end of this month, May. However, some key highlights I guess I will just go through with you is that I had a wonderful time driving down with a couple of brothers from Wisconsin, which would be our old friend and brother, worshipful brother, Adam Rigdon from Watoma Lodge up in Wisconsin, as well as a newer Master Mason named Mike. I won't say his last name because I don't know if he wants me to mention him on the show, but I met Mike, and Mike is a new bestie, and he was a pleasure to have around. And as a new Master Mason, seeing and listening to his thoughts about the conference were very encouraging. I feel like the conference is well on its way to accomplishing everything that it wants to accomplish and to be seen the way it needs to be seen, especially through the eyes of a new Master Mason who thought it was a wonderful event. The event in general. Now, it should be noted that I've witnessed an evolution of the Midwest Conference of Masonic Education over the years, and that is from the first time I went pre-pandemic, maybe 2018 or 2017 or something like that. We were in Iowa. We were in a hotel, a large room, which didn't need to be that big because the attendance there were 17 people, including myself. And the Illinois contingent was me and Spencer Hamann, Chad Lasik, and Scott Duball, plus the current Secretary-Treasurer and who was the late, great Ed Rund from Illinois, and also Ray Babinski from Illinois. So all of those people were from Illinois. Almost half the people in attendance were just Illinois Masons, and there were only a few from other jurisdictions. And that's when I first met Brother Chad Kopensky. Well, over the years, that conference grew to be more of a sort of Masonic con-type conference, with less emphasis on reading my jurisdiction report to the other members, and that's it, to more networking and sharing about what's working in what jurisdiction and how that could potentially be something for another jurisdiction to take on. Lots of exchanging of ideas, which makes the conference so worthwhile. In addition to that, bringing in speakers, not in particular to, say, educate us on a particular topic, right? Not like a Masonic con, where I might present on the legend of Adam's grave. Instead, these are presentations in and about the concept of Masonic education. So we're talking about ideas of what constitutes Masonic education, how to implement Masonic education, how to do research, how to avoid biases, how to avoid logical fallacies, all of these kinds of things. This last year, our president was Brother James Buckhorn. You may have heard him on the Meet, Act, and Part podcast recently, where he and Brother Chad were on the show to talk about a great number of things related to MCME, which is, of course, Midwest Conference Masonic Education. You know, the conference started back in 1949. It's really the longest running conference of its kind. The two longest Masonic quote-unquote education conferences in North America belong to two prestigious organizations. One is the Allied Masonic Degrees, what they call AMD Week or Masonic Week. The second is, of course, the Midwest Conference on Masonic Education, which was started again 1949. The conference revolves around the member states, and there's a president and up to 5 vice presidents, so they know where this conference will end up each year. Next year is Nebraska, the year after that, Illinois. The year after that, I can't remember, but the year after that is 2030, and that'll be in Texas. Yes, Texas is in the Midwest Conference of Masonic Education because it's that darn cool, and it's that worthwhile. So, again, I've said this before, but over 53% of regular Masonry in the United States is represented at the conference, which means if you're listening to this program, your Grand Lodge likely gets some influence about what happens in their jurisdiction from Masonic education from what is discussed and talked about at the conference. The conference is really cool. Anyway, what did we do? Well, we had a bunch of great presenters. We started off the day with Brother Stephen L. Harrison, who was there, who had copies of his new book you heard last week on the show. He was there and he did a presentation that was excellent. It was really about how he went about doing all of this research and how he stayed away from editorializing and the process of conducting this extensive type of research in and around a Masonic and not so Masonic topic. After that, we had Mrs. Heather Calloway, Dr. Calloway, I should say. She came on to talk about the preservation of fraternal items and how to know whether something is worth something or not, and how to take care of those things, and best practices, and all of this kind of work that she's been involved in with for many, many years now. It's been exceptional. After that, we had Brother Daniel Gardner and Heather K. Calloway talk a little bit about kind of a show and tell exercise about items and how to best preserve them and looking for treasures within your lodge. Then we had Dan Gardner talk on the process of doing research in a presentation he called Anyone Can Do Research, which I thought was fantastic because it speaks to all of us, not in a condescending way, but in a real way that says, hey, you, brand new Master Mason who might not even be into Masonic education, here's some stuff you can do, and really, you can come up with something. It's really easy. In the words of Stephen L. Harrison, get a crazy idea. Step 2, run with it. So there was that. We also had presentations by Brother Adam Kendall, who did a fantastic job as well. He was able to present via Zoom. Of course, we also had Brother Chris Hodap and Brent Morris. The night before at dinner, they did a special Ask a Dummy and an Idiot, everything you wanted to know about Freemasonry, which was a really cool presentation. And no disrespect to those two, the title of that presentation comes because, of course, Chris Hodap wrote The Dummy's Guide and Brother Brent wrote The Complete Idiot's Guide. So it was a play on words and a very cool presentation, and the two of them were very funny. Chris Hodap also did a presentation over lunch the next day, and he talked about Dwight L. Smith, and this was in particular very informative because we were in Indiana for the conference, and Dwight L. Smith was this Indiana Mason who was essentially one of these guys not unlike Missouri's Ray Denslow. Then, over dinner, Brother Brent Morris did a presentation on numbers and demographics and what works, and some really interesting, funny facts about the research that he had conducted regarding reaching out to members and exit surveys and all of these kinds of things. And he had some really cool numbers to share with us. Now, granted, those numbers are probably 10 years out of date, but they were still very informative. And of course, a congratulations goes out to all of the new officers and vice presidents of the Midwest Conference. So, save the date now, the 2026 Midwest Conference on Masonic Education will be in Omaha, Nebraska, April 24th through the 26th, 2026. You can certainly go to the website, mcme1949.org, check it out. And again, you don't have to join the Midwest Conference of Masonic Education or be a member jurisdiction to attend. You can attend as a Master Mason. You just got to buy the ticket. Now, you could join as an individual, and you will still have to buy a ticket. You can join as an organization, which Many people do. And you can also join as a grand jurisdiction. And this is not some crazy cost to join. So you can check it all out there. I mean, a grand jurisdiction membership, I think, is $500, which is a drop in the bucket of the education budget for any Grand Lodge. I wanted to just give this quick update this week and release this, but I figured, let's go ahead and add in an education piece as well. So let's check it out. This week, I'd like to read a piece called The Power of Music in Ritual. Now, I know in some grand jurisdictions, music is not allowed during the ritual. However, here in Illinois, it is, and in many jurisdictions it is. But this isn't just about music in masonry. It's about music in ritual. This piece comes from universalfreemasonry.org by excellent brother Axel Savari, 18th degree, published on March 20th, 2025. Music is a particularly potent tool for the proper conduct of Masonic ritual. Without it, the high drama of Masonic ceremony would be impossible. Is music essential to a proper experience of the mysteries? Music is a moral law. It gives a soul to the universe, wings to the mind, flight to the imagination, a charm to sadness, and life to everything. It is the essence of order, and leads to all that is good, just and beautiful, of which it is the invisible, but nevertheless dazzling, passionate, and eternal form. Plato. The most primal instinct of human beings is to sing and dance. As anyone who has spent any time around an infant will know, long before our consciousness has developed speech and rational thought, we are dancers and singers. Music flows from us and is inevitably followed by dance, for the two impulses cannot be separated. Every form of primitive religion and culture uses these twin tools to establish patterns of thinking and of communicating with the gods. Whether songs of grief to mourn the passing of a fellow creature, or rain dances, or other such attempts to commune with nature, all of civilization begins in song and dance. Masonic ritual itself, a microcosmic representation of civilization, is also composed of song and dance, not only by the hymns we sing and our ritual movements around the altar, but also in the rhythms and melodies of nature that are incorporated into the layout of our lodges and the structure of our ceremonies. For centuries before the invention of writing, and even long afterwards, song has been the primary means for conveying history and legend. Without music, we would not know who we are. As our rituals are a microcosm of civilization, it is necessary that they begin with music. The reason for this is very simple. Music is the most accessible and easily produced method of changing our consciousness. All rituals are an attempt at altering our state of consciousness, to think differently, to feel for one another in ways we have not before, and to consider problems from perspectives we were previously incapable of. In order to do this, rituals must affect our symbolic consciousness, the area of our mind that interprets with abstract thought and sensations we receive from objective reality. Our symbolic consciousness is developed by sound. We learn to listen and to speak long before we learn to read and to reason, and because of this, music can bypass the filters of our rational mind and directly interact with our symbolic consciousness. Music blends emotion, memory, and symbolism. It evokes emotions within us. It can summon, almost by magic, emotional responses that have nothing to do with our present state of being. It is one of the most powerful tools by which to assist with the alteration of consciousness. How often has a piece of music transported you and your mind to a place outside of space or time, to a memory long forgotten, until it was brought forth once more by a song or a piece of music that opened your heart? Music has the power to alter consciousness by creating changes in our neurochemistry. Listening to personally important pieces of music will trigger the release of dopamine and serotonin, powerful neurochemical mood regulators that can have a dramatic impact on the way we perceive and react to certain stimulus. Tense, dark, or emotionally depressing music can release adrenaline and epinephrine, heightening feelings of sadness and dread. Masonic rituals, especially the ceremonies of the Blue Lodge, are dramatic events where the candidate is moved from stimulus to stimulus in order to evoke certain responses. There are two examples from the ceremony of initiation that are particularly potent. the first symbolic journey, and the passing of the bags. At the beginning of the first symbolic journey, the neophyte has so far experienced the lodge in relative quiet. He has been spoken to, he has spoken, and there will have been soft background music played throughout. The mood will be solemn and somber, but certainly not loud or chaotic. As he takes his first step on his journey, however, a gong is struck with force. The music changes darkly and dramatically, and the room erupts in unseen sounds. This has a jarring effect, like having a rug pulled out from under your feet, or feeling for a step that isn't there. It is unsettling to the consciousness and reminds the neophyte that he cannot expect anything to be certain from this point forward, and reaffirms that he is not in control. The sensory overload is key at this particular moment in the ritual to reinforce the fact that he has crossed from his everyday existence into the unknown. When the bag of benevolence is passed at the conclusion of his ceremony, the neophyte is again dramatically moved from one state of consciousness to another by use of the music. His light has been restored. He has some sense of what is going on and can feel the end of his ordeal approaching. As the bags are passed, joyful classical music is played, imparting feelings of celebration and happiness. All seems well, and the neophyte prepares to imitate the actions of the brothers, but begins to worry as the bag approaches him and he realizes he cannot act as everyone else does. Then the music fades, silence returns, and the gaze of the almoner and the brethren of the lodge once more return to him, with no music for comfort and no place to escape. In this case, the sudden lack of music dramatically alters the consciousness of the initiate that the lesson of charity may be well and truly imprinted upon him. Masonic ritual is filled with such moments of high drama that are accentuated by the proper use of music, whether it is primal instinct, lofty emotions and sentiments, or terror and dread that must be evoked. Without music, the ritual is considerably reduced in power. The aim of the ritual is to use repetitive motions, actions, and practices to establish certain truths and perspectives in the minds of its practitioners. In accomplishing this, music is an essential tool. Music is a store of memory, not only for our personal memory, but for the memories of those who have sung the same songs in ages past, loved them, venerated them, and cherished them. It is my belief that our thoughts and feelings are tangible things with weight and impact. We cannot see them, taste them, or touch them, but who would deny the reality of our feelings, of our emotions and inspirations? I believe that these are as real as any material form, and that music, particularly holy music, such as the hymns sung in lodges, churches, temples, and mosques, and the music that is used over and over again in Masonic ritual, absorbs these feelings, emotions, and intentions like a sponge. When a song is sung millions of times by millions of people across hundreds of years, that cannot help but add something to that song. I believe the effect is subtle yet very real, and it is this effect that gives certain forms of music an innate reverence that can be felt upon hearing it for the first time. What is it that makes the Moonlight Sonata or the Ninth Symphony more powerful than the latest pop music offering? It is not only a more sophisticated composition, but also the feelings and emotions that have been stored in these pieces over centuries that gives them weight and gravity. Finally, it is music that allows us to dance. Dance is the inevitable consequence of music, whether it is the tapping of a hand or a foot, the nodding of your head, or waltzes, marches, tangos, or any of the other myriad forms of dance that human beings have invented. Dance is the physical embodiment of the rhythm that is described by music, the movement of Plato's moral law. Without music, ritual is a series of mere movements and speeches, but when infused with music, with the spirit of nature and the creative symbolic language of humanity, it becomes a dance. It is then that the deacons become graceful and acrobatic, fulfilling their duties with poise and dignity. It is then that the formal movements and signs of the wardens become solemn and grand. It is only then that lodge truly becomes alive, for all living things sing songs and make music, whether we can hear it or not. The plants sing, the birds sing, the oceans sing, the very earth itself is constantly making music and projecting it into the depths of space. We humans, when we first awoke to our lonely position in the cosmos, began to sing, both to comfort ourselves and to make our mark on a world we found to be beautiful and worthy of celebration. Ritual, Masonic or otherwise, is the attempt by human beings to mimic, refine, and perfect those patterns that we have observed in nature. It is then essential that music be used to convey these messages, and the natural world is but one infinite song and dance. Infinite rhythmic structures with individual melodies emerging and falling away like the individual human lives that brighten or darken this world for a short time until they pass. We are, each of us, notes in this grand orchestral symphony of life, and by harnessing, channeling, and engaging in the majestic music of the universe here on Earth, in our lodges and in our hearts, we can truly begin to sing. I absolutely love this piece. You know, not enough goes into talking about this concept of music. Sure, it's very expressive, and we talk about the creation of music as in the creators. However, there's something to be said for the music and the dance by defining them as the dance of ritual and the music of the sounds created. It all blends together in this beautiful play. I'll leave you with that. I want to thank you all once more for joining me this week. I have to thank our contributors, fellows, producers, and legacy partners of the WCY podcast, because again, without you, we can't do this. If you're out there and curious on how you can help support the show, head on over to WCYpodcast.com, click on Support the Show, and check out the various options. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or anything else, you can always reach out to me at admin@WCYpodcast.com. I reply personally to each email, so I may take a minute, but I will get to you, I promise. With that, I'll talk to you all next week, and until then, stay on the level. For Whence Came You, I'm Robert Johnson. Take care.
You've been listening to Whence Came You, a Masonic podcast featuring research papers and discussions related to Freemasonry with your host, Brother Robert Johnson. Be sure to join us for our next edition.
WCY Media.
Wait, leave me as not